Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Dominic Wellington. I'm Director of Product Marketing for Data and AI at SnapLogic, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ravi Krishnan, who's Head of Solution Engineering Americas. Hi, Ravi. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you, Dominic.
Today, we'll be talking about how we can unlock business velocity using the latest Model Context Protocol, or MCP for its friends. So this is all about AI adoption in the enterprise. So we want to talk briefly about where we are, what we've learned so far. And then we'll dive straight into agentic integration, how we can combine a traditional integration platform as a service with MCP to get full visibility across your traditional data and systems and the latest AI agents. Ravi's also prepared a fantastic live demo to show you how this actually works in practice. And then we'll have a chance for Q&A at the end so that you can ask your questions. So please do stick around to the end. So just this morning, SnapLogic has released the results of a survey around AI adoption at work. And we've done some very interesting results. So 78% of workers that responded to the survey are already using AI in their role, and 50% are already using AI agents. On average, employees are interacting with AI 6.5 days a week, so not just during the working days, but also the weekend. And they report saving a little over 3 hours on work-related tasks thanks to the technology. So far, so good, but there's a but. Despite the strong adoption, 94% of respondents to a survey about AI reported barriers to effective AI usage in their organization. And these were not technical barriers, they were primarily process barriers around data privacy and security concerns that organizations had about how to use AI. And it's not just the SnapLogic survey that found this. There was a report that made a bit of a splash a few weeks ago that came out of MIT. And the big quote that everyone had from it was, despite tens of billions of dollars of enterprise investment in Gen AI, a surprising number of organizations are getting zero return from all of that. Which led to some people at SnapLogic coining the phrase, AI projects die of data dehydration. All of these great AI demos and promising pilots and proof of concepts are failing to go into production because they cannot get access to your valuable context, your valuable enterprise data and systems. The only way to ensure the success of those promising AI projects is deep integration with existing data, apps, APIs, and services. And so that's what we want to talk about today. Over to you, Ravi.
Thank you, Dominic. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Ravi Krishnan. But before we jump into the solution of MCP and how SnapLogic provides a solution for MCP, I know we have a huge amount of audience today with mixed knowledge levels in terms of some being pretty advanced in MCP and some who are getting started. So just to make sure we have everybody on board, right? What I'd like to do is just take a step back to talk about MCP, just as to set the stage, and then we'll quickly jump inside how SnapLogic supports it with a detailed demo, and we can peel the onions on the architecture to see how exactly it's being built. But like I said, we all are using AI today, right? Every one of us is using AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, you name those. I myself use agents 5 minutes every day, right? Or every 5 minutes in a day. But there is a big challenge with what I'm seeing with using these AI agents is what I call as the problem of walled garden, right? These standard AI models have a huge blind spot, which is your business. Today, when you look into any of these AI agents, they are built or trained on the public knowledge, right? The public data from the internet. But what they lack is it does not know about your data, your business, your customers, and your processes. And that's the context gap, right? Where it does not understand your business domain completely. And the end result is when you ask a question to an AI that it cannot answer, it hallucinates. It hallucinates in such a way that it confidently gives you answers that you know that it's not correct. And the reason for that, like I discussed, is the lack of the context of data. For any AI to work or to be successful, it needs two things. It needs to know the data, but also needs to know the context about the data. This is where MCP comes into the play. MCP standing for a model context protocol. Think about it like a universal adapter for your data. As you can see in this diagram, you have your data sources on the extreme right hand side, which could be your SaaS applications, it could be your databases, it could be your homegrown applications behind your firewall or in your protected zone. MCP unlocks those data assets and makes those assets available for AI agents in a secure way, right? So think about MCP as a secure bridge that allows your AI model or an agent to be able to plug in to your data within your private data sources or in your protected source and making those intelligence available for your consumption. SnapLogic provides you with that MCP gateway. We give you the ability at the core, we are the integration and an intelligent integration platform. We help you connect to all your different systems, irrespective of their deployments and locations. But now with MCP, SnapLogic provides you with that MCP gateway that allows you to expose those assets in a safe and a secure manner to your agents. So now the agents can really apply those brains with the data from your organizations, from your systems, and making them more contextual and providing a better AI experiences. From a building blocks standpoint, here is how the SnapLogic's MCP offering works. As you can see in the center screen, SnapLogic provides support for both MCP server and an MCP client, along with the tools that are required for execution. So moving from left to right, you would see all of these agents that you all currently using. You have your public agents like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. You can also use your custom agents, whether it's being built homegrown, or SnapLogic also gives you the ability to build agents, AI agents inside your platform or your business applications. They can now use MCP protocol as a conversational connection to talk to our MCP server, where SnapLogic would receive it, authenticate, authorize it, and based on the request, execute the tools. Think about tools as integration pipelines, but SnapLogic provides you with an agentic integration pipeline, meaning you no longer have to define those static pipelines inside the platform. SnapLogic would provide you with an ability to do it in a completely agentic way. And I'll talk about what this means shortly when I look into the demo. So based on that, it can help you call your backend applications. So one of the big challenges that I've been hearing from customers today is, hey, we have all of these applications. Everybody is embarking on an MCP. Guess what? Everybody has invested money on putting those MCP services. They're not going to give it to you for free. They're going to start charging. So we already started having integration sprawl. We started having data sprawl, then became API sprawl. Now we have an AI sprawl. Now pretty soon you're going to start seeing an MCP sprawl as well. This is where SnapLogic provides you with that single layer or unified layer where you can have a one-stop place where you can connect to SnapLogic's MCP server endpoint, and we can help initiate those handshakes to any of your backend systems. Moreover, we also provide you with an MCP client. So if you have MCP servers, either internal or external, SnapLogic can help you with the help of LLMs, again, working closely with LLMs to be able to talk to your external MCP endpoints and providing those contextual and conversational experiences to your agents. All of this provided with governance, security, and observability built native into the platform. So you can focus on data that means business and being able to provide under a single converged runtime. So you're not looking to have a separate instance or a separate engine to be able to build and manage. SnapLogic provides a single converged runtime where all your data integration, app integration, API, and now agents, MCP, can all be built and deployed onto the same server. With that being said, let's jump into a demonstration to quickly see SnapLogic's MCP offering in an action. Rather than showing the product directly, I wanted to walk you through a storyline of a fictitious customer called Keystone Property Management, their challenges, and how they've used MCP to really help their agents to provide that operational efficiencies for their staffs as well as for their customers in place. So as the name suggests, the Keystone Property Management, they are into the property management business, helping customers, their tenants and stuff manage their property. They've embarked onto a digital transformation journey where they started procuring a bunch of SaaS applications like us, getting in. But now, as they've embarked onto the digital transformation journey, they've started facing severe fragmentation problems. Some of the fragmentation problems that they're facing is application sprawl. There have been too many disconnected platforms. The data, which used to be an asset earlier, is now a liability. Why? Because each of this data is now present in multiple systems and has the ability to be updated, thereby making data inconsistent. Integration complexity, they have a lot of fragmentation tools and a connectivity to connect to all of these systems. But more importantly, because they are in the business of providing services to their clients, their agents have been facing a slower response time because of the fragmented view for this agent. Today, they have to go to Salesforce, they have to go to ServiceNow for tickets, Salesforce for account information, they have to go to an invoice management system. So time is being spent across all of those things. This is where they wanted to really get and leverage AI, more importantly, MCP, where they wanted to leverage the AI-driven automation, where they wanted to focus on getting the data AI ready, but more importantly, allowing these AI assistants to provide that digital experiences or conversational experiences for the tenants and staffs in place. So with that, now the context of Keystone Property Management and the challenges, let's look into how they've used MCP or how SnapLogic has enabled them with the MCP protocol. So now they can use the tools of their choice, in this case, Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT. By the way, everybody is moving towards that, right? Now, there were days where people were looking to build agents in-house. But today you have these popular agents. You can deploy or have a private version of these agents in your protected zone. There are contract agreements that these agents provide, these LLMs provide, where your data is not going to be used to share or train these models. So more and more I'm seeing enterprises are now wanting to use these public or private chatbots or private LLMs to be able to facilitate conversations. So with that, let's take a quick look into some of the systems. So like I said, it's a property management company. They've been using Salesforce, where they have a bunch of properties that they manage. Again, for demo purpose, I've just kept in some few records over here. They do have a homegrown ticket management system where it's a database where they have a list of all the tickets that has been created by all the different tenants. And again, and the reason why I'm showing here is to show the variety of different data sources that Keystone Property Management is having to go through in place, right? Which is what they wanted to really make that agentic, but use MCP to provide that experiences to their agents so they can provide a better experiences to their customers. They have, by the way, because they are in the property management business, they also have what you call home magazine reports, where they basically look into the list of all the vendors who can start providing services, right? Who they can leverage to provide those services to their clients. And finally, they have their invoicing systems where they maintain all the payment status for all of those. So now you have a combination of different variety of sources that Keystone Property Management is looking to connect to. So we saw a file system with magazine information where all the handymans and the vendor information are provided, databases with all tickets, CRM with Salesforce, and so on. Let's see this in action now. I'm going to be using Claude Desktop. I could very well be using ChatGPT, Gemini, or any of those. I'm going to start with this just to show you the outcome, and then we can go a little bit deeper on how you can also build agents inside the SnapLogic platform. The very first thing is to register your MCP endpoint. So if you click on this icon, you will see there is something called as Ravi Krishnan's MCP server, and it has got a bunch of tools that are made available to this client. These tools are nothing but a simple SnapLogic pipeline which connects to your data sources, and on a click of a button is now being exposed as an MCP endpoint for consumption. So let's go ahead and start looking at it, right? My first thing is Salesforce. I have a meeting coming up with one of these accounts. Let's take Cypress Village. I'm going to copy this, and I want to be able to know the details about this account. Well, today, like I said, the challenge that was that the team had a very fragmented view. They had to jump into Salesforce to get that. They had to jump into ServiceNow, and they had to jump and learn all of these different systems to be able to extract information. But with MCP, I can now use public agents to be able to ask the questions. Something like, show me the details on account Cypress Village, which was one of the account we copied from Salesforce. Now, when I hit enter, what's going to happen is it's going to automatically figure out what tools that it needs to use. By the way, I think I disabled this accidentally. So let's enable this. and ask this question back again. And by the way, this is all live, team. There is no mock data, and you can see things happening. And you can see that I'll query the information from CRM system. I never said that you need to go to the CRM system or Salesforce to pull in that required information. With the MCP tooling, and which we'll get inside the details, it automatically understands the intent of what is it that the user is trying to do, and then basically be able to figure out what is the right tool or the system that needs to be executed. So in this case, you can see it executed the Salesforce query tool, which was one of the tools that I made it available as my MCP endpoint. And you can clearly see the details that it's passing, the parameters. And by the way, these are agentic, and I'll show you the actual pipelines and show you how they are made as agentic manner in place. So now I can see all the details about this particular account. Not just the account details, but I'm also able to see all the opportunities that I have in place to work with this particular customer. Great. I have a meeting with this customer. But like any other customers, right? If I were to go in, nobody is going to help me or welcome me with open arms. The first thing that they're going to talk to me about, this is not working or that is not working. So I got to be better prepared with what are some of the issues that this organization or this enterprise, in this case, Cypress Village, has been having in. So now the agent typically has to go to a service now to extract that information, which means now I have to provide them with a separate login. They have to understand the systems. But now with SnapLogic's and the MCP support, I don't need to. I can simply go ahead and ask the question by saying, show me all tickets open for this account. And it'll automatically figure out that I'm trying to ask information about tickets or service issues, and it'll rightly call that specific tool. In this case, it's calling a ticket querying tool, and it starts showing me all the tickets that are being opened up on behalf of this customer. Great. One-stop place where now I'm now able to interact across all of these different systems. So now when I start looking into it, I see that a lot of the complaints from this particular property manager or this particular property is there has been a lot of window repairs that is being called out. So I need to find a person or a vendor who can help me with Windows repair. And like I said, today, Keystone Property Management has been doing this in a very manual manner. So they have these PDF documents, which is completely unstructured document that we all get in our households every month. They've been using this to figure out which vendor could help them with window repairs. And again, this is a very manual task. As you can see, there is a huge amount of document being put in place. So as part of our agentic integration platform, SnapLogic gives you the ability to even parse unstructured documents, thereby supporting your RAG use cases, retrieval augmented generation, where we can extract those contents, put it into a vector databases, and give you the ability to search. So with SnapLogic's and the MCP offering, Keystone Property Management staff no longer have to go through these extensive PDF to analyze it. I can simply go ahead and say, show me all vendors who can help with window repairs. But I just don't want to jump in with anybody. Let's use the power of LLM. This is where MCP and the agents are really coming together. Today, my team, after they collected all this information, they were using Power BI or a Tableau to do analysis on top of it. But again, another tool, fragmented tool, and an experience that the team has to go through. But with these agents, I can now even build dashboards. So I can simply say that, show me all the vendors who can help with Windows repairs, build me a chart grouped by reviews. So it is going to do two things right now. It's going to call my tool, which is a SnapLogic pipeline that reads data from these unstructured document, in this case, a PDF document. And it found that there were 8 vendors who can help me with Windows repair. But since I asked it to build me a chart, so I don't have to go to a Tableau or a Power BI to get that information, it's actually using its intelligence in real time to build me a very interactive chart. So if you give a couple of seconds, as I said, it's all a live demo, you're now going to be able to see all the vendors coming in from that unstructured document, boom, with an interactive chart saying, hey, here are all the vendors that are available for you. And here is the the ratings. You can see it's pretty interactive right now by saying how many top, neutral, or bad reviews do I have for this. I can go ahead and create any kind of experiences that I want or any kind of graphical representations in place. But again, we all have been using agents. The agents are awesome, but they only work until it knows about the data. And today it has been lacking the data. So now with MCP, SnapLogic is now able to unlock those data assets. So you can make sense of the data and get all the valuable insights. You all may be thinking, Ravi, you have been showing this demo so far, and it's all been about retrieval. You've been extracting data, but you haven't shown anything about writing those data back again to those systems. When you talk about agentic or when you talk about automated integration, it needs to be both bidirectional. Absolutely. Let's get to that and wrap up this demo. So now that I have known everything about this account that I'm going to meet with, and I have the information about all the tickets and service issues, I've also identified which vendors can help me with repairs with a graphical chart allowing me to pick which ones I need to go with. So it looks like I may want to go with Repair Champions. Seems to be having a good review. By the way, I can ask additional questions. One last thing, I want to see if there are any payments due for this customer. So right now what I have is, again, coming back to the fragmented view, I have an invoice management dashboard, which I'm using today to look at all the payments. So since we're talking about Cypress Village, let's go and check on it. And I should now be able to see that there is one payment that is missing for that customer. Now, while I can certainly go here and get that information, I can simply go back to my client and ask the same question, right? Which will give you the exact same view. I'll say, show me all the payment details for account Cypress Village as an example. It's now going to connect to my payment management system, which is what you saw earlier. And you can see it's calling the payment tool, passing in the required information, and it's going to give me all the details coming out over here. And exactly, you see there is an overdue, which is what we saw earlier. So me as a rep, I'm going to pick up the phone, call the customer saying, hey, Cypress Village billing department, I know there is one payment due. Can you help me make the payment? They go ahead and make the payment, and I'm like, okay, done. I have to post this payment. One way is I can go to that particular system, the invoice management system, to make it, right? Like you saw over here, I can click on it and do the update. But again, the goal is that experience. I can now use the same agent to do a push updates. I can now say, great, customer has made the payment. Can you update the payment status to paid for invoice? And let's take the invoice that we were talking about. So it was this invoice that we made a payment for. So now what's going to happen is, so far we have seen we were only reading records, which was great. But now, by the way, it's asking me for permissions as well. I say allow, and now it's going to actually make a payment updates to it. So not only can MCP or SnapLogic with MCP support give you the ability to retrieve data, but it also gives you the ability to make changes. And by the way, it says it has made it to payment. So if I were to go back to my backend system and simply do a refresh, you will see that transaction is now being made as paid from thing. So to summarize, what we saw right now is AI agents are great. It's only trained on the public data. It lacks your data, your company data, your employees, your systems, and your processes. MCP gives you a way to unlock those assets and making it available for agents. So now you can have an intelligent conversations with them. SnapLogic provides that MCP gateway layer, giving you the ability to connect to all your data sources, irrespective of where they reside. You can run this gateway on the cloud, connecting to your cloud-based application. You can run the MCP gateway on-premise or behind your protected zone, connecting to your on-premise applications, thereby giving a secured access to your data so these agents can start communicating. So at the end, the value proposition for Keystone is SnapLogic unifies and prepares all the data. It gives the agents an AI-powered unified view via MCP, right? Allowing you to build agentic pipelines and providing the superior experiences. Let's see what this looks like. So far, you have seen the end outcome. Let me show you what some of those pipelines are going to look like. It's a simple pipeline where you're going to specify what is it that you want to do. Again, if you look into my pipelines, it's very simple pipeline. I haven't done anything. In this case, I was talking to Salesforce to retrieve the Salesforce data, right? This is my Salesforce Snap where I had a simple SQL query. And all I said is, hey, give you the ability to search based on the name. And in the info section, again, any pipeline that you build in SnapLogic has an info where you can specify what parameters do you want to accept, right? That you have the ability to specify the different types of parameters, what's required, what's optional. But more importantly, this is where you're giving information of that particular tool so that the agent knows what is it that it's trying to do. In this case, I've kept it very simple. Like this tool queries all the account information from CRM/Salesforce. So now when you're asking the question, it knows based on the metadata that this pipeline is exposing, which tool it needs to call for. Similar thing, if I look into the ticketing data, exact same thing. I had a SQL statement, but in this case, I was reading from a table and substituting the value of account. But again, the description, which tells you that this tool fetches all the ticket data information from the provider account name. If you look into my payments section, right? Again, you can give as verbose as possible. So in this case, if you remember, we wrote some data inside the payment system. So if you look inside my info section over here, I've made it a little bit more elaborated over here. I said this tool is designed to update payment status. It extracts the ID information. I want you to put it in this format and do a basic validation. So the more information you give, the agent can have it. But again, the beauty here, the SnapLogic is the same pipeline that you're going to be using to build integrations, that same pipeline can be exposed as an MCP endpoint with a simple click of a button in place. So I can simply go and say, create a task. And as part of the task, I could go ahead and say, register this as an MCP server. That's all is needed for you to expose your pipelines, your data assets as an MCP endpoint for your agents. Some of you all may be thinking, Ravi, this is great, but you still have built a lot of pipelines with hard-coded fields and variables inside. But that's not true agentic in place. I wanted to show you a kind of a building blocks. Let's take another example over here. Here is an exact same Salesforce retrieval, but rather than putting in the entire query, I'm asking LLM to basically generate the query for me. Earlier, if you remember, in the parameters, I said $name. I had the query populated, but I said LLM substitute the value for this particular variable called name. But right now, I want my users to be able to query Salesforce accounts, Salesforce opportunities, Salesforce leads without having to build pipelines. So now I can make this true agentic by asking LLM to construct the query. But now the challenge comes in is LLM's query generation skills depends upon the fields that it knows publicly that is available. It may not know about the custom objects or the custom fields that I have created. This is where SnapLogic makes your pipelines true agentic by creating what we call as a companion tool. Let me walk you through this. As you can see here, I'm providing a description which says, hey, this is a read-only Salesforce SQL query returning JSON rows. Use this to fetch data from standard custom objects. But I'm saying, if uncertain about field names, because I could go ahead and say, hey, show me the MEDPIC details. And LLM will not know what MEDPIC means on the Salesforce context, but that's something custom that I have built. I can now instruct by saying, if you're uncertain about the field names, you first query the object's field description via the SnapLogic's companion tool called object tool. So what we give is, we would in runtime dynamically go to Salesforce for that object, retrieve all the schema details, and then provide those information. So LLM can now construct the query dynamically based on the output that's coming in. This is how we're making it true agentic. You don't need to build multiple pipelines, one for account, one for opportunities, one for leads. Just keep it one pipeline and use the companion tool, which gives you all the metadata information about that particular object. So it can construct those things on the fly and be able to do this. Again, just scratching the surface onto it. So to summarize, what SnapLogic enables you is to basically get your enterprise data AI ready based on the metadata intelligence, and get your enterprises agent ready for tomorrow by really providing that cognitive empowerment. So your enterprises can now start using MCP and access those data in the agents the way you want it, whether it's the public agents that can be deployed in your private network, or SnapLogic also gives you the ability to build AI agents and use any LLMs of your choice. So that was a quick overview of the MCP and the SnapLogic support. Take a quick pause here and open up for questions. And Dominic, back over to you.
Thanks, Ravi. That was a really in-depth demo. So there have been a fair number of questions that I think would probably be easiest for you to answer, since you built the whole thing. So let me scroll back through the list. Jeffrey's been answering some of them, and I've been answering some while you were talking. But one question is, I think you showed this about the configuration of the MCP servers tools, how that is split between Claude and SnapLogic. Do you want to just go over that one more time to make sure everyone's clear on that split?
Can you repeat that question one more time, Dominic?
So the question was this configuration of the MCP servers and tools in Claude directly, or was this done in SnapLogic?
Great question.
So you did show that, but maybe it was a bit quick for people who are not super familiar.
Sure. That's a great question. So thanks for asking this, right? So if you remember, I showed you a bunch of tools, nothing but an integration pipelines being built on the SnapLogic platform. We exposed those tools as an MCP endpoint, right? Now, all I had to do was SnapLogic is going to provide you with an MCP endpoint URL that I'm basically providing it or adding it as a configuration to my cloud desktop. So in this case, this is my cloud desktop's configuration. All I had to put in is the endpoint URL of SnapLogic, the MCP endpoint URL of SnapLogic, and then it gets access to all of those tools. So coming back to Claude over here, when I clicked on this description, it says Ravi Krishnan's MCP server, right, which is nothing but coming up from the name that has been put over here. And then when I click, it shows me all the tools or the pipelines that are made available. Just to give you an insight of how this also works, there is something called as an MCP inspector, where I can go ahead and connect, and I can connect to the same endpoint. I can say list tools. It connects to MCP endpoint of SnapLogic and shows me all the tools available. And by the way, these are all the descriptions and the purpose of the tools that are also provided. So yes, to answer your question, you build MCP endpoint inside SnapLogic. We give you the URL. You take the URL and make it available to your client. In this case, I've used MCP Inspector as one of my client. Or if I'm using in my cloud desktop was a simple configuration where I had to provide the endpoint URL for it. And then it gets access to all the assets and resources from there.
Excellent, thank you. There are several different questions, they're all variations on the same theme about how to secure access to the data that's behind the MCP servers. Do you just want to talk about that for a few minutes, and that, with any luck, you'll hit on all of the questioners' points?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And thank you for bringing up. MCP looks very exciting that now you're able to get access to your data and start playing with agents. But the biggest question now comes is security. How are we going to handle security by making sure the right person has got right access to the right data? So I'll split the security into two parts. One is I'll call it as an agent authentication. And then the next part is going to be the user who's using that agent authentication in place. So by default, any MCP endpoints provide you with an agent-based authentication that comes in via bearer token and others. But now we can support streamable HTTP with OAuth sitting on top of it. So which means now you would be able to support delegated authentication and authorization. So if Ravi comes in to the agent, that agent being ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or it could be the custom agent that you have built in-house, or it could be SnapLogic agent, you now have the ability to basically do a delegated authentication, essentially OAuth, where it will redirect me to an IDP, an identity management provider, to authenticate, get those access tokens, and then send those tokens downstream, so the tools can now start accessing those in place. So that's how we handle the authentication and authorization piece. Now, coming to the data aspects of it, this is where the other layer comes in. So we do not send all the data to your LLMs, because that's one of the risk, right? Even though we may say it's all private and stuff, enterprises still have some worries or questions about, am I sharing all my data? You're not sharing all the data. So what happens in SnapLogic is, when you ask the question, we go to the LLM and say, hey, based on the metadata, the field names that you have identified, help me with the query. The query could be a database SQL statement, or it could be a REST API query by populating your URL and other parameters. So we don't send the data. We use the metadata to work with the LLM to help us build the query. So then we can go to the backend system to extract that information, only the required information, and then work with the LLM to generate a cohesive response back to it. So that's how we handle security, both from an agent authentication to user who is accessing that agent, and then with your data in place. Hope that answered the question. Happy to dive deeper, more inside, if you want to connect on.
I think that covers a bunch of them. If you had a security question that was not answered, do bring it back up in the chat. There was another architectural question, or a couple of questions I wanted to touch on. It looks like from the questions we have a mix of experienced SnapLogic users and people who are more curious about the MCP topic and maybe less deep with SnapLogic. So I just want to touch briefly on the SnapLogic architecture. So SnapLogic has a two-tier architecture. There's a control plane that always lives in the cloud, but the execution nodes, what we call the data plane, can live either in the cloud if you're doing SaaS to SaaS integration, but many of our customers have their data plane in a virtual private cloud or even on premises, and those are where the pipelines will run, and therefore that's where the MCP tools will be exposed from. So that is also part of the security architecture, because at that point the pipelines are running inside your firewall. Your data is not crossing the firewall. So there are lots of nuances to exactly how you set this up, what your architecture looks like. But SnapLogic is used in highly secure, highly regulated and compliant environments. And some of the reasons for that are just the intrinsic way the architecture allows you to have that separation of concerns. Question just popped into the top of the feed. Curious if you used any public MCP servers for building this solution, Ravi.
Great question. We do have the ability to connect to public MCP servers. Right now, at the end of the day, enterprises are looking to get their data. These data could be accessed via APIs, or could be accessed via an MCP endpoint that a third-party application is exposing. This is where, when you look into the diagram that I shared, SnapLogic provides support for both MCP server as well as an MCP client in place. So as part of an MCP client, you can now connect to a third-party MCP server to be able to ingest all those tools and be able to communicate or execute those tools in place. So yes, SnapLogic provides support for both. Now, in this demo that I showed you, I did not use any external MCP server, for the only reason being is SnapLogic is exposing the MCP endpoints. So all we're doing is connecting to all the backend applications, leveraging their existing APIs or files or databases and so on. But absolutely, we can support both client and server with the required security and the process that we talked about.
Exactly. And SnapLogic, being an existing integration platform, it has all sorts of mechanisms for secure access to the backend systems. Someone asking about access to databases, etc., with industry standards, secrets management, and whatnot. There was another question which I thought was interesting to discuss. There are a bunch of questions coming in about how the licensing works. The answer is that some of this MCP support, because MCP is so new, the support is still in beta, so you should talk to your SnapLogic customer success manager to get all the relevant bits turned on. And at that point, they can also let you know if you may already have access, if you have some of the packages, or there may be some conversation to be had there, but that's going to be kind of environment specific.
Just wanted to add something to that question, Dominic. That's a great question. I'm not going to get inside the licensing, but I want to certainly talk about a topic around licensing, but how this agentic architecture truly enables. Unlike other vendors out in the market who provide iPaaS and offering and stuff, right, where the licensing is based on connections and volumes and so on, you don't want your architecture to follow your licensing. You want your licensing to support the best architecture that you choose for your business. And what do I mean by that, right? So today, when I started building these pipelines, every single component of the Snap can be completely parameterized. So for example, if I'm using an HTTP client Snap or an HTTP Snap to talk to an external APIs, I don't have to specify hard-codedly whether it's a get operation, a put operation, thereby having you to create multiple pipelines, right? Because your licensing many a times would say that, hey, it's based on connection. So if your connection is a post, that's a one connection. If you have to read, that's a separate connection. In our case, everything can be parameterized. So which means I can have a single pipeline that is going to read, going to write, going to update, or going to patch it. An LLM on the fly or the agentic on the fly, I can parameterize each one of those and be able to support all those different operations. So essentially what I'm saying is it's the architecture that really gives you the flexibility, right? And the licensing doesn't ding you on that. So more to happy to discuss more on it as you start playing, but I would like you all to start looking into it as you're evaluating other vendors, because MCP is not just about building pipelines to extract data, but how agentic can you make it, right? Without any restrictions or tight dependency on licensing. And that's where SnapLogic makes it really, really flexible. So you can focus on data and AI experiences that means business.
Exactly. And just a last comment as I saw come in, MCP servers can indeed use a lot of tokens. So one of the emerging best practices is actually sometimes MCP is not the right move for your agent, for your AI tool. And you might be wanting to use a CLI or an API or some other method of connection. And that's exactly why an integration fabric like SnapLogic is a good choice here, because it gives you that flexibility. Where MCP is the right move, then you can, as you saw, very quickly and easily expose MCP tools that will give access to all of your existing enterprise infrastructure. And if you're expecting high volumes and you don't want to burn through a lot of tokens, or you don't want to have to just worry about that concern, then SnapLogic will also support you with more traditional integration endpoints. And it's all the same pipelines, it's all the same techniques, it's all the same security architecture, governance, and oversight. That's the whole point of having this sort of heterogeneous architecture. But I think with that, we are about at time. Many people have been asking about the recording. The recording will be available shortly after we go off air. There's just some technical time, but shortly after that, it will be available at the same URL. So feel free to share that with your friends and colleagues. Ravi, if you go to the last slide, one more slide, please. There are some additional resources. These are also linked off to the side, but just for convenience, if you prefer to take a shot of the QR code, the one on the left will let you request an MCP specific demo. So the people receiving that request will know you're interested specifically in MCP, and we'll get back to you on that. And on the right is the MCP white paper. So you can download that. That's brand new, gives you a better idea of what is going on with SnapLogic and MCP. So we'll leave those on the screen for a moment, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with many of you soon. Thank you, Ravi, for putting together that very comprehensive demo and leading us through all things MCP.
Thank you, team. Looking forward to. Please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to have a very customized demo or a showcase as to how MCP can fit your environment and your business needs. Thank you again for joining.